Module 3 Communication. Hi, my name is Abdul and I'm a fully qualified biomedical scientist, and in this video I'm going to be talking about how you can write your evidence for Module 3 Communication, and this is the mandatory evidence that you have to write. So what is the mandatory evidence? It is to explain the different methods you use to communicate effectively within your department and with service users. So the associated SOPs that the IBMS have mapped this evidence to are as follows. So 7.7, use information, communication, and digital technologies appropriate to their practice. So let's start highlighting the key points here. So information, communication, and digital tech appropriately to their practice. And 7.8 is to understand the need to provide service users or people acting on their behalf with the information necessary in accessible formats to enable them to make informed decisions. And then lastly, communicate the outcomes of biomedical procedures. So the outcomes of biomedical procedures, I'll highlight this one differently. Okay, so in summary, this is what this means. So it's not just about making a list of communication methods. You need to explain how and why you use them and reflect on how you've improved. Okay, so now that we know what we need to write and build our evidences, here's the tools that we can use. So what should we talk about? So the key elements to include. You've got different methods of communication. So this can be verbal, non-verbal, so sign language, or electronic. So it can be online, emails, messages, Teams messages, or however you communicate. It could be phone calls as well. So I didn't mention phone calls, but just a few examples that you can start thinking about including in your evidence. Second thing is who you use them with. Who are these people that you're talking to? Who did you communicate? Are they doctors? Are they fellow biomedical scientists? And why was it relevant that you spoke to them? And then on the third point, what you should include is why you chose that method. So why was it effective to do a phone call rather than going to in person to send that message? Or why is an email better than having a phone call as well? So think about why you chose that specific method of communication, and then reflect on it. So was it good? Was it a good choice or was it a bad choice? Why was it a good choice or why was it a bad choice? Could you have done something differently? Could you have adapted your technique? And then again, how did you learn from it? If not, if it wasn't a great method of communication, what could you have done better? So now we have our key elements to include. Let's start thinking about how we should present the information. So again, it's the evidence listed out on top. So explain the different methods you use to communicate effectively within your department and with service users. So you can present this evidence in different ways. So you can do a flow chart. So you can talk about, so there's a point A, there was a situation, you went to point B. So it could be email, and then they phoned you back. So it could be a phone call to someone else or back to yourself potentially, and then they went in person. And then you get result. Let's say the patient got their result or something. So it could be a specific scenario. Let's say, someone wanted to book a patient sample in, they sent an email to person B. Person B phoned a consultant. Oh, is this patient come in? And then, or, has this patient been booked in? Then person C could go in person to someone else. Let's say person D. Let's say, oh, has this person been booked in? And then they said you can get the result. And then person D can say to person C, yes, they've been booked in. So that's the result. So you can do a little flow chart to show the process here. You can also do a little table. So you can talk about different methods of communication. So you can talk about phone call, and then talk about what happened. So what did you speak about? Why was it important? and why it's an effective method of communication. So you could probably have 3 columns here. So method, and then so you've got method, and then you can talk about like what happened, and then whether it was good or bad, whether it was a good method of communication or it wasn't as effective. Not necessarily bad, could just use not as effective. And then with another way, you can present your evidence is annotated images. So you can do an email, so you can take screenshots of emails, obviously redact any confidential information, but you can use that as an image that you can annotate, who was copied in terms of who was emailed. So you can say a consultant was copied in, or a nurse was copied in, or another scientist was copied in for a sample. That's something that you could use. And again, spider diagram. So you can put like methods of communication. You could talk about like verbal, and you can talk about the positives and negatives of verbal. You can talk about email, and then the positives and negatives, or shoot those off into different points from your spider diagram. That's also another method that you can use. So let's look at the examples in a neater way. So this is an example that I've created. So you can see the different methods of communication. You got oral, written, IT, non-verbal, telephone, and then who they were communicated with. So you can put colleagues, pathologists, lab managers, consultants, colleagues, clinicians. So it just lists a bunch of different people that you communicated with. And you can talk about why. So why did you communicate with them? So why did you communicate with them in that specific method? So speaking to someone is quick, it's immediate clarification. They tell you, you get an immediate response. Written, there's a permanent record. IT is fast. Non-verbal, just attentiveness and also respect. So active listening in that way. Telephone, again, it sort of kind of ties in with immediate clarification, but you can call from someone without physically being there. So you can speak to them independent of location. Again, how you know it's effective in your table. So when speaking to someone, there's fewer errors. You get positive feedback. With written reports, the effectivity or the benefits of it is that it's accurate, it's traceable. IT emails, you can get confirmation emails, and also traceability. This last column here is something that I think is really, really good, because it shows how you've developed yourself and adapted your knowledge with the communication method that you've done. So, for example, with the oral method, you've adjusted your tone detail based on the audience. So that's something you've learned. That's also something you can expand upon in your further down in this column, or if you wanted to do it in a written format, you can written format as in a piece of text, you can expand on this a bit more. Another example is IT emails. So you've learned how to use a professional tone and adapted details to be more concise. Again, same in the written reports, use clear, concise language. Non-verbal, you've learned how to maintain eye contact and open posture. So that's an example of what you can write about in your evidence. So here's an example of text that you can expand upon in your own portfolio. So let's go through it. During training, I initially struggled with giving results over the phone, clearly. After feedback, I adopted the SBAR format. So the SBAR format is situation, background, assessment, and recommendation. And this improved clarity, reduced miscommunication, and has taught me the importance of adapting my communication method based on the situation and feedback. So that's an easy sentence that you can use in your own evidences to show your reflection and your development with your communication. And here are some mistakes that you can avoid when writing your evidences. And first one is not expanding on points. So this sentence is pretty good because it shows you what you improved on and why it's important. So not showing your reflection on different types of communication, why they're effective, why they're not so effective, and showing your development is something that a lot of students struggle to do. So remember to mention that, what was the result of your communication? Why was it effective? Or why was it ineffective? So again, it's showing your training development. So during training, I initially struggled with giving results over the phone clearly. So it shows that there was some improvement to be made. And then you listen to some feedback. So you gained feedback and you've improved yourself. So showing that journey is really, really good. So again, not expanding on points. And the second mistake is not using relevant examples. What I mean by this is making your evidences not personable, not showing what you've done, talking about like generic sort of methods of communication, why they're effective. Try and tie it into how it was effective for you. Why was it particularly good, or why did it not work very well, or if there's any particular methods of communication that you wanted to work on. Make it really relevant for you. So that's a mistake that some people could fall into. Again, leaving out adaptation, so how you adapted to the situation or the person in terms of how you communicated with them. A lot of times, we can leave that part out or not really expand on that point. So make sure to really talk about that point, how you adapted your form of communication when you found that something was effective or not as effective. And then lastly is, not explaining how effective it is. So this point, again, I've already mentioned this, why this particular method of communication worked well or why it didn't really work well. So just try and explain that fact. And if you get that in, that will make your evidences really, really good. So that is the end of the video. I hope you've got a better understanding on how to write this type of evidence, for Module 3 communication. It gives you a better idea on what the IBMS are looking for when they come to verify your portfolio. So yeah, watch this video again, go through it, go through the examples that I've listed for you, and also the mistakes to avoid. And hopefully by the end of it, you'll produce a really, really nice looking evidence for this module. And also, if you're interested, I do have a full guide available on the registration portfolio. It's got some helpful videos and productivity tips on how you can effectively write your portfolio in the fastest way possible. I've also got there an example portfolio which you can use for inspiration when it comes to writing your own. Thank you so much for watching. Take care.